The camera this entire movie was shot on isn't something you can just go buy. That lead wall you've seen behind every big Marvel set, it costs more to build than most people will earn in their entire lives. Doc Ock's mechanical arms weighed more than most grown adults. Marvel can now build an entire New York City inside a computer before filming a single scene. And one of Spider-Man's most iconic moments nearly became a disaster because Tobey Maguire was hanging upside down with blood rushing straight to his head. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a Spider-Man movie the same way again. Let's start with the single most expensive tool on set, the camera itself. This movie was shot primarily on an ARRI Alexa 65 and a Red V Raptor 8K. And here's the thing about the Alexa 65 specifically, you can't actually buy one, ever. ARRI only rents them out, and even renting one will run you well over $75,000. These sensors are so powerful, they can pick up individual threads on a suit or a single tear forming in an actor's eye in perfect sharpness. The data these cameras generate is so massive that hard drives fill up in terabytes every single day of shooting. Compare that to the 64 gigabytes most of us have on our phones, and you start to understand the scale here. This same camera has shot some legitimately iconic films. Captain America, Civil War used it, so did The Revenant. And that one's a perfect example of why filmmakers are obsessed with it. Director Alejandro Iñárritu shot The Revenant using 100% natural light, meaning sunlight and firelight only, nothing artificial. Normally, shooting in near darkness on a regular camera gives you a grainy, noisy mess, but the Alexa 65's dynamic range was strong enough that even in near total darkness, it captured the frost on Leonardo DiCaprio's face, the vapor from his breath, and the massive dark forest behind him, all in crisp detail. ARRI's other high-end model, the Alexa Mini Elf, isn't cheap either, running close to $80,000. Now here's something you've probably heard of but never seen explained properly: the volume. Acting against a green screen is genuinely brutal for actors. A lot of performers burn out fast, staring at an empty green void, forced to imagine an entire world around them that isn't there. The volume replaced that. It's a massive, wraparound LED wall running real-time 3D environments through Unreal Engine, and it's not just a giant television. 3 technologies work together to make it function. First, Unreal Engine renders the actual 3D background in real time. Second, camera tracking. Special sensors on the camera talk directly to the screen's servers, so when the camera moves left or right, the background shifts its angle and speed to match, creating real parallax. Third, and this is the part most people don't realize, the light from that screen is real. If the background is fire, ice, or deep space, that light is actually hitting the actor's face and skin naturally, on camera, in real time. Building one of these isn't cheap. An 80-foot diameter LED volume setup can run well past $10 million just to construct and configure. Productions like The Batman and Thor: Love and Thunder leaned heavily on this technology. That said, Marvel's actually pulled back from using it as much lately, mostly because the logistics of running one are a genuine headache, even if the results are undeniably fun to watch. Next up, performance capture, and this is where things get genuinely wild. Actors wear a tight gray and black suit covered in small tracking dots. And around the set, you'll find 15 to 20 infrared cameras aimed at them. Those dots are tiny, retro-reflective balls. The second infrared light hits them, they light up, and the computer tracks every one of them in 3D space in real time, instantly building a digital stick figure. On the actor's face alone, you're looking at 50 to 70 tracking dots, plus a small facial rig camera mounted right on their helmet. Every hand tremor, every blink, every wrinkle on the forehead during a line of dialogue gets recorded and mapped directly onto the 3D model, live. Old school VFX meant animating a character frame by hand. Performance capture completely rewired that process. A high-end mocap suit and facial rig setup like this runs about $30,000. So how does Spider-Man actually swing through the air at that speed on camera? First-person view drones, capable of hitting roughly 60 miles an hour, get used for the extreme, twisting angles you can't get any other way. In the earlier films, that option didn't exist yet. Crews would run cables literally kilometers long between real Manhattan skyscrapers, then attach a camera rig that could race along that cable at around 50 miles an hour. Running that rig took 2 people, a pilot with a joystick controlling direction, and a separate camera operator handling rotation, focus, and framing. Today, a huge amount of that's been replaced entirely. Productions now build all of New York City in 3D inside a computer instead of physically rigging real buildings. When they do need a practical cable rig, they'll typically rent a system built by a company that specializes in exactly this. And that rental alone can run anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. Before any of that gets shot, there's pre-visualization. Directors used to sketch action scenes out on paper storyboards, which made it genuinely hard to visualize complicated sequences before committing real money to the set. Now, before spending a single dollar on the actual shoot, the director, cinematographer, and camera crew put on VR headsets and walk through the entire action sequence inside a fully virtual version of the set, built-in Unreal Engine. The director and cinematographer hold VR controllers that function as a literal virtual camera. They can swap lenses on the fly, position virtual stand-ins for the actors in a process called blocking, then hit record to capture the whole virtual sequence as a saved file. That saved sequence becomes the actual blueprint stunt performers and camera crews follow later on the real set. Avengers, Endgame, Dune, and the John Wick films were all built this way. And studios that specialize in pre-visualization typically charge a few $1,000s for every minute of footage they plan out. Marvel also formats its biggest releases specifically for Screen X, where side projectors extend the picture onto the theater's left and right walls, giving you a 270-degree panoramic view. You're not just watching the scene from a seat anymore, you're sitting inside it. Remember the illusion sequence in Spider-Man Far From Home, where Mysterio traps Peter inside his hallucination? In a Screen X theater, that green magic and those collapsing buildings actually wrap around the side walls of the room, and audiences genuinely feel like they got trapped in there right alongside Spider-Man. Now let's rewind, because some of the best effects work in this franchise's history has nothing to do with computers at all. In Spider-Man 2, Doc Ock's 4 mechanical tentacles weren't CG to begin with. They were real, fully functional 12-foot animatronic arms, each weighing around 100 pounds. Alfred Molina had to wear a heavy metal corset harness under his costume just to physically support that weight, while director Sam Raimi has always been a massive advocate for practical effects. He wanted Molina to have something real to physically push against and react to, not empty green space. Those tentacles were engineered by a specialty effects house called Edge FX. Built from dozens of individual mechanical segments with internal cabling that moved almost exactly like brake lines on a bicycle, which is what let them coil and move like an actual living creature. The claws at the very tips were even more advanced, with tiny embedded motors precise enough to hold a cigar, pick up a pair of glasses, or grab Tobey Maguire by the throat. This kind of large-scale animatronic work isn't unique to Spider-Man either. Steven Spielberg built a 20-foot animatronic T-Rex for Jurassic Park that was so heavy and complex that rain on set would sometimes short-circuit it, and the thing would start twitching and moving completely on its own between takes. But by the time No Way Home rolled around, Doc Ock's tentacles had switched to 100% CGI. The actor now just wears a lightweight mocap suit, and the computer builds everything else from scratch. Practical effects go even further back than that. In the 2002 film, when Green Goblin bursts through the Osborn balcony, that was a real, physical set, actually detonated with real explosives. You obviously can't legally set off real explosives in the middle of Times Square, so the production built a massive, life-size replica of Times Square inside an old factory in California, with the balcony itself constructed out of lightweight breakaway wood. To capture a blast sequence like that properly, crews typically position 8 to 12 cameras around the set at different angles, with several running high-speed slow motion. That's also where suck comes in as a creative safety net. If a director decides after the fact that the explosion needs to look bigger or smaller, than what they actually captured, Suck lets them adjust that instead of reshooting the entire sequence. Even the classic web-slinging shots used to be almost entirely physical. Actors were suspended and swung around on real heavy-duty steel cables, painted white and coated in a special foam or rubber layer actually resemble webbing. In post-production, the top portion of that cable would get digitally erased and replaced, connecting it seamlessly to a building through CG. For close-up shot where Spider-Man fires a web to punch someone or yank an object toward him, the effects team would fire a foam-based liquid using compressed air to sell the shot physically on camera in real time. Big motorized winches positioned at the edge of the set could yank a stunt performer through the air at 30 to 40 miles an hour, and one small mistake in timing meant a stunt performer slamming straight into a wall. And if you remember the famous upside-down kiss scene, that one was genuinely miserable to film. Tobey Maguire was hung upside down by one ankle for real, which meant blood rushing straight to his head the entire time. There was also fake rain running on set for that scene, and all of that water kept running straight up his nose for the whole shoot. Today, Marvel's approach has basically flipped. When Tom Holland does anything complex, swinging through the air an insane stunt, it's almost entirely cheap. Holland typically acts in plain, ordinary clothing, and his full Iron Spider suit or mask gets added completely in post-production. But here's the interesting part. Marvel seems to have realized leaning that hard into full chi wasn't actually the right call for every project. For this new film specifically, they went back to genuinely closing down real city streets and shooting practically on location again. The same instinct that made the earlier films feel so tangible in the first place. So that's the entire tech stack hiding behind every Spider-Man movie you've ever watched, from cutting-edge CG wizardry all the way back to a guy on a cable getting yanked into a wall. Let me know in the comments which era of Spider-Man effects you actually prefer, the old-school practical chaos or the fully digital modern stuff. I'll see you in the next one.